Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, why CISA provides no solutions, only new excuses, the new Australian smartcard system is a total disaster, and why Google's URLs are so crazy. Plus a great big batch of your questions, a rockin' roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 239 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on October 29th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, why, that's powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. You should go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Alan, I gotta draw attention to your shirt. I know I do this from time to time, but that's a good one. Come on, Alan, show it to the people at home. I cry because others are stupid, and it makes me sad. That's a good shirt, Alan.
It's Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, I know. I get it. It's good. Yep. Today we start with something that's got me really fired up: the Cyber Information Sharing Act, or CISA. And yes. That's where we begin our rather large show today.
Mm-hmm. So on Tuesday afternoon, the Senate voted 74 to 21 to pass a version of the CISA that we've been, they've changed the name a couple of times, but we've been trying to kill this thing for a couple of years now. Mm-hmm. That roughly mirrors legislation passed in the House earlier this year, paving the way for a more combined version of the security bill to actually become a law at some point. The Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act is designed to stem the rising tide of corporate data breaches by allowing companies to share cybersecurity threat data with the Department of Homeland Security, who would then pass it on to other agencies like the FBI and the NSA. So my first question is, how does companies sharing corporate data stop data breaches?
That's my first question as well. How does it, Alan? How does that at all?
Like, I could understand it if one company gets breached and they manage to keep it a secret, right? It's not, the customer data doesn't get out there, but it's just like a advanced, Chinese government hacked into us or something. Sure, giving that to Department of Homeland Security so they can give it to the FBI, and then an advisory goes out telling all businesses, hey, watch out, bad guys are doing this thing, right? Like, we saw the one about the cash registers getting hacked after Target.
Right.
Right? And it said, hey, companies, check on your cash registers, make sure, right? That kind of thing, that makes sense. But I don't see, it doesn't really define what data they're sharing. Like, to prevent a data breach, this company is going to just give all their customer data to the NSA. It's like, well, then the NSA gets hacked. And
here's how you know this doesn't make any sense. Is there is already a program very much like CISA, already in place, already run by the Department of Homeland Security. It's called it's a system that's already existing. It's all on for information sharing between companies. In fact, there has been a study of 68,000 recent cyber attacks from the research at the, I think it's the Mercatus. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it. MERCATS, Mercatus Center. Anyways, they did a study of over 68,000 attacks and incidents last year, and they say they tracked none of them back to information sharing as a cause or would have prevented it. Out of the 68,000 they looked at, none of them would have been.
It depends what 68,000. If you think every phishing email is a cyber attack, then yes, information sharing is not going to help so much with that one. Other than sometimes, the FBI puts out an advisory. It's like, hey, they're sending out this thing that's a fake invitation to a conference for aerospace, right? But whatever. Mm-hmm. I really don't see how the information sharing. Facebook's program, where companies share signatures on actual attacks, kind of might actually prevent a third place from getting hit with one of these attacks.
Right.
But it doesn't really help the first or second place.
Yeah, very much.
But yes, like most of these data breaches are not advanced persistent threats that require information sharing. It's install the bloody patches. Or, don't have SQL injection vulnerabilities in your web app, and then you won't get breached, right? So no amount of information sharing other than repeating things they've already been told is really going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. So the version that got passed on Tuesday spells out that Any broadly defined cybersecurity threat information gathered can be shared notwithstanding any other provisions of law. So if it's illegal for companies to share certain information, this bill makes it not illegal.
That's nice and tidy, isn't it?
Yeah. Privacy advocates and civil liberties groups say CISA is a free pass that allows companies to monitor users and share their information with the government without a warrant, while offering a backdoor that circumvents any laws that protect users' privacy.
And it indemnifies them along the way, too.
Yeah. So it definitely, like, companies mostly don't have an interest in monitoring their customers more than what they're already doing for marketing reasons or whatever. But this basically allows the government to be like, hey, we want all your data.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, it has nothing to do with cybersecurity. Critics of CISA say the devil is in the details, or rather in the raft of amendments that might get added to the bill before it actually passes. The Center for Democracy and Technology, a nonprofit technology group in Washington, D.C., has published a comprehensive breakdown of the proposed amendments and their potential impacts. So you should go check that out if you're especially interested in it. The CDC says despite some changes made to assuage privacy concerns, neither CISA as written nor any other proposed amendments address the fundamental weakness of the legislation. According to the CDC, the bill requires that any internet user information volunteered by a company to the Department of Homeland Security for cybersecurity purposes be shared immediately with the NSA.
Oh.
Other elements of the intelligence community and the FBI and Department of Justice and many other federal agencies, a requirement that will discourage company participation in the voluntary information sharing scheme envisioned in the bill. Or worse, what's the first thing we know about keeping information secret? Don't share it with more people than necessary.
That's true.
And the law mandates that once you give it to the Department of Homeland Security, they don't get to decide who should get it. They should give it to everybody.
In fact, the law also states that any employee of the federal government can have access to the data. Even contractors, Alan. Contractors are allowed access to the data.
So, the next, I don't know, it's I don't know, I couldn't think of a funny pun on Edward Snowden.
Oh.
But the next guy who works at Booz Allen Hamilton and decides to run off with a bunch of data might not be so, philanthropistical as Edward Snowden and decide to, sell it for money.
Yeah, yeah. The sharing between divisions is concerning for me because the threshold of what triggers the companies to share is really low. And then once that information gets shared, it can be distributed throughout the federal government to any agencies, the NSA is the example they give, but also the IRS or anybody else.
And they say at the moment that it's voluntary for the companies. But as we've seen with Yahoo and Google and so on, at some point the NSA will just go over and be like, no, it's not voluntary. If you don't give us the money, we're going to want $200,000 a day until you do.
Right.
And all of a sudden they will be voluntarily giving up all their customer data, and the NSA gets it all. It's
been interesting because a lot of people seem to be stopping at information sharing. I've heard analysis on air from other people that are like, well, sharing information is good, and that seems to be where the thought stops.
Right, but this law is about allowing things that would normally be illegal, basically. And it's like sharing information about what attacks are happening against you is not illegal.
Right.
So we don't need a law that says it's legal to share the information.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The current bill that's going through the system right now originated in the Senate Select Intelligence Committee by Dianne Feinstein and Burr. They are representatives of the Intelligence Committee. They are the biggest apologists for the Intelligence Committee. This is an Intelligence Committee bill.
From the Commerce people.
No.
But the Commerce people we proved last week don't know what they're doing because they're trying to ban us from researching hacking cars.
Right. Right, but it's just, if you just look at where the bill originated from, it pretty much tells you everything you need to know right there.
Exactly. If there were an easier way, we were told that companies to share so-called indicators of compromise, well, we have those. It's called the internet.
Yeah.
We use it all the time.
Yeah.
Facebook, the companies have self-organized their own things for this. If the government wanted, we've had CERT, right? That's the Computer Emergency Response Team. It's every country has one. You find a bug. You tell them about it, and they tell everybody else about it, and it's all coordinated.
That would be called information sharing.
Yes. We've had that since the 90s. When Kaspersky finds a thing, they publish a big PDF, and at the bottom, 8 pages, are all these indicators of compromise.
These people just need to watch more TechSNAP.
Exactly. And then Krebs weighs in and says the biggest impediment to detecting and responding to breaches is in a more timely manner comes from the fundamental lack of appreciation for the fact of actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so a law that allows information sharing isn't going to help because the law is not about information sharing. So the most frustrating aspect of the legislation approach to fixing this problem is it made virtually impossible to measure whether a bill like CISA in fact ever leads to any more
right.
information sharing happening
Exactly.
or any fewer data breaches happening. Rather than encouraging companies to share their own cybersecurity standards, the professionals say, CISA ignores the goal and offloads the responsibility to a generalized public-private secret information sharing network, which isn't going to stop any compromises.
No, it's not going to help anything. That's what's kind of the bummer thing about it is
it only ever going to make things worse? Either there's going to be some big database out there with all the information from all the companies put together ready for me to steal, or it's just all going to end up in the NSA's database and it's not going to stop a single attack.
And companies will feel less compelled to shore up their networks when they know that, hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing the sharing with the federal government. I'm indemnified. This is our cyber approach. Is this participating in this information sharing? It's just not going to solve anything at all. And in fact, in some cases, going to give companies excuses to be even more negligent than they are today.
Yep.
Some kind of brilliance. That's what that is, Alan. That's some kind of brilliance. You got to really give it to them, though, for really making sure they can figure out a way to mess it up. Really, it's really impressive. Anything else on that story?
No, that's about it for that one.
All right, I'll tell you about something that is truly impressive, IX Systems. IXsystems.com/TechSNAP. Go get yourself that white paper. IX Systems is a great software and hardware provider. They can do systems that you've only dreamed of, and they also have systems available and very approachable to small businesses. They make sure that the people that build these systems know exactly what they're doing, and when you call in to get advice, they know exactly how to help you. Even the sales experience is a lot different. It's a step above everybody else. And because of that, they have had a lot of customers over the years who have some really awesome stories. And so IX Systems has launched the Mission Complete campaign. #Mission Complete.
Hi, I'm Brett Davis with IX Systems. We don't look at our clients as just customers with projects and budgets, but rather engineers on technical missions, each with unique goals and challenges. We've been building enterprise storage and server systems for nearly 20 years, and we're continuously amazed at the creative ways that people solve problems using our systems. Nearly every day we see someone doing something brilliant with one of our technologies, be it FreeBSD, FreeNAS, TrueNAS, PCBSD, or OpenZFS. We've been so inspired by these people that we've decided to launch a campaign that we're calling Mission Complete. The purpose of this campaign is to give you the opportunity to share your stories with us about how you've completed various missions using IX Systems servers and storage, or using technologies like FreeNAS or OpenZFS to save the day. As a way of saying thank you, we'll be giving away monthly prizes for the best stories we receive.
All right.
So take a minute and tell us how you've completed your missions at ixsystems.com/mission complete, or tweet us at IX Systems with the hashtag Mission Complete. We're looking forward to hearing your stories, and best of luck to you on your next mission.
My first real exposure to IX Systems was actually at some of the fests and the community events, because their employees are part of the community, but also they're plugged into all of the stuff that's going on. And I guess they were just down, Michael Dexter was down at Siegel this past week, and he got some great photos that you can find out online. IX Systems is really plugged in, and that's a cool campaign. #Mission Complete if you do it on Twitter, or you can find the submission form at ixsystems.com/Mission Complete. I bet there's a few members out in the audience that would qualify for that.
I'm looking forward to reading those stories. Those should be good ones.
That'd be really cool. IX
Kind
Systems
of reminds me of the old war stories we used to do on TechSNAP.
Right, ixsystems.com/Mission Complete. Go turn your war story into a story. And you know what? Maybe we'll get to... How cool would it be to have a TechSNAP audience member win that? That would be awesome. All right, Alan. So that moves us to our next story. When I saw this story, I thought it said plaid crypto, and I was all down for plaid crypto. I'm ready. That sounds like fashionable. I'm ready to go. But that's not it.
Well, it is called plaid crypto.
Yeah. But is it actually about a plaid shirt, Alan? Because that's what I want. Okay.
Plaid in this case stands for the Protocol for Lightweight Authentication of ID.
Okay, not quite the same thing.
So it's the new Australian standard for an unbreakable smart card identification protocol. Basically, you'd have this smart card, and it would prove you are you, and it wouldn't be fakeable, and it would be all secure and private and awesome.
Sounds perfect.
And it got kind of rammed through the process and got ISO certified on a fast track, and no one ever actually got to study it properly first. And so a scientific paper has come out analyzing the protocol and found it to be horrible.
Womp womp.
Who would have guessed something the government did and then rushed through without, letting people comment on it and actually investigate it first was horrible. So there's this paper that's been published called Unpicking PLAID, a cryptographic analysis of the ISO standard track authentication protocol. But basically, it says, technically, the protocol is a disaster. In addition to many questionable design choices, we found ways to trace user identities and recover card access capabilities. So basically, the smart card has a bunch of public keys on it, one for each different capability that you might have, like access to the healthcare in Australia or access to a building or driver's license, all the different possible things that you could be allowed to do or whatever. And so basically in the paper, they found they could track a person, even though you're not supposed to be able to, by their accessing the card in different places. And they could figure out what things are allowed by your card, even though they're not supposed to be able to. The attacks are very efficient, only takes a few seconds on home hardware to guess it, and involve some funny techniques such as RSA modulus fingerprinting and German tanks, which I'll get to explain in a minute.
What? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So there's Matt Green wrote a blog post about it that explains it a little more readably than what you would get in the scientific paper.
Okay.
But all the details are in the scientific paper if you want. So I have a link to the paper here, but basically it says, when a reader queries a card, the reader initially transmit a set of capabilities that it will support, like hospital or bank or social security center, or in the one example on the blog, alligator wrestling.
Yes.
So if the PLAID card has been provisioned with a matching public key for any of those capabilities, it goes ahead and uses that and authenticates the device. However, if no matching key is found, right? So if your card doesn't have a bank public key on it, instead it fakes a response by encrypting junk under a special dummy RSA public key called a shill key that's stored on the card. And the idea there is that way the card reader couldn't tell what things are on your card, right? So if it's, a card reader at the hospital, it can't ask, hey, does your card support bank? And your card would say yes and give you the key, or give an error instead. So it always returns a fingerprint so that the person asking can't ever tell whether that was real or not, right? So it seems like, that seems like a good approach, right?
Yeah.
Always return some junk so that, and only the right person can tell whether the encrypted thing is junk or real. But actually, therein lies the problem. You see, the shill key is unique for each card rather than, because if they were the same across all the cards, then it would be easy to identify it as the fake key, which presents a completely new avenue of tracking individual cards. If an attacker can induce an error and subsequently fingerprint the resulting ciphertext, that is, figure out which shill key was used to encipher it, they can potentially identify the card the next time you encounter it. So basically, by having card readers in a couple places or something and doing different requests, eventually they could find out that, hey, that is like this specific person's card. They won't necessarily know who it is, but
they've identified the
I've
card.
seen this card before at this other place. And so all of a sudden, it's now I can track individual people and where they're going with it. So, and then they have the details. So to distinguish the RSA moduli of two different cards, the researchers employ an old solution to a problem called the German tank problem. So this actually comes from World War II. As the name implies, this is a real statistical problem that the Allies ran into during World War II. The problem can be described as follows. Imagine that a factory is producing tanks, German tanks in this case, where each tank is printed with a sequential serial number in an ordered sequence, right? There's like tank 1, tank 2, tank 3, tank 100, tank 1,000, etc.
Sure.
Through the battlefield captures, you have managed to obtain a small or presumably random number of tanks, right? In different actions, you've managed to capture or at least record the serial numbers of a bunch of different tanks. From the recovered serial numbers, it is now your job to estimate N, which is the total number of tanks produced by the factory. So, just by looking at the random serial numbers you've seen, you can try to guess how many tanks the Germans have made.
Okay.
Mostly that's just, take the highest number you've seen and how many there are, and then kind of assume that maybe it's a little bit higher, but basically, yeah, you can figure out exactly, or not exactly, approximately how many
Close enough.
tanks the German factory might be producing.
Right.
Or, on this day, the highest number we saw was this, and on this day, the highest number we saw was this. So in between those two dates, they probably produced about this many tanks. But, the story behind the PLAID standardization is possibly even more disturbing than how bad the protocol is. PLAID was pushed into the ISO standard in the fast track procedure. Technical loopholes made it possible to cut off any discussion within the ISO groups responsible for crypto and security analysis. Concerns from tech-savvy experts and other national panels were dismissed or ignored completely. The authors of this post contacted ISO and the Computer Emergency Response Team of Australia before going public with our paper, but we got a questionable and somewhat irate response, and they have a link to the PDF they got back by the PLAID project's editors, and then they showed the response they sent back to that reply. Despite every possible evidence of bad design, PLAID is now approved as an ISO standard and is coming to you very soon inside security products, which will advertise non-existent privacy capabilities. Right? They'll be like, oh, with this card, people won't be able to tell who you are or track you. And it turns out, yes, they will. The detailed story of PLAID is in the paper, is worth a read, and casts many doubts on the efficacy of the most important standardizing body in the world, right? What's the point of this ISO standard if a government can just decide they want to push something through and get it through anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting to see how cryptography products can be approved by ISO without understanding any of the real security concerns, or actually, when an algorithm like AES or SHA-3 or whatever goes up to become the new standard, we take a whole bunch of different competing standards and we have a contest. We have years of people pounding on it and doing papers on trying to break it, all that. And whereas when ISO is going to approve a cryptography standard, it's just a rubber stamp. Instead of actually, people investigating it, people trying to prove it that it's wrong, and, the regular scientific process that we would get. There was basically no peer review even on this. It was crazy.
It was just pushed through for political reasons, I guess.
Yep. And then so I have some extra links, including one from Bruce Schneier talking about how amateurs, it turns out, produce amateur cryptography.
Surprise.
And, in particular, with these cards, they're like, oh, we don't want people to be able to track you, so we're going to design this system. And it's like, well, that sounds pretty good. And then it's like, oh, now that I think about it, it turns out you've actually made it worse. You've made them more trackable rather than less.
Right. Surprise.
It's like, whoops.
Is it? I don't know. So it is a cool name, but not such a cool implementation.
Well, it's a pretty lame name, actually, but yes.
Well, here in the Pacific Northwest, PLAID is really cool, Alan. It's super cool.
You mean hipster?
No. Well, no, we were grunge way before hipster was even a thing. Come on now, give me some credit. All right, well, any other thoughts on that story?
You don't want to hear what people wear plaid shirts over here.
Well, so I like that. I like that story, Alan. That's very interesting. And I was wondering what the tie-in with the tanks was. They have in the Wikipedia article you link, they have how many tanks they estimated, how many tanks they actually produced, and what the intelligence agencies thought they were producing. And the estimation was really close. The intelligence agencies was way off.
Yes. Way under or way over?
Way over.
Yeah. Well, of course, you always say, oh, the enemy's big and scary. We need more money to fight them.
Right, yeah. It was
we need to send a bunch of people in with this sabotage manual.
It was like 146 tanks were produced. They estimated something around there, and the CIA or intelligence agencies estimated 1,000. They were off by 900.
Well, it's because the CIA wanted a bunch of money to send people in with that sabotage manual to go and sabotage the factory.
Sabotage manual from last week, if you missed it.
Oh, it was last week. It's all blurring together on me.
I know. Well, any other thoughts on that story?
Nope, that was a good one, though.
All right, I'll tell you about the folks over at Ting, my mobile service provider now for a long time, over 2 years. I've saved over $2,000. What? Yeah, $2,000 by switching to Ting, and you can too. They have a savings calculator. You can go plug in your current usage and see how much you would save. Here's why. Ting is mobile that makes sense. No contracts, no early termination fee, and you only pay for what you use. And they have an awesome dashboard. It starts at just $6 a month. You can choose from CDMA or GSM services. Hello, isn't that nice? And one of the things about their dashboard that I love a lot is you can also turn devices on and off, set limits, like something that's great if you have kids, set alert thresholds, name your devices. That way they have common names across all of the different ways to control Ting. They have an app for your phone. They have a great dashboard that you can log into. Check them out right now by going to techsnap.ting.com. Please go over there and just give them a try. I think you might be really interested if you do their savings calculator and plug your actual usage in there. And one of the things I really like about Ting, I think it's especially applicable to our audience, is you do get to choose between GSM or CDMA. And that is really nice if you just kind of have a better idea of what works in your area. And one of the things that Noah has been doing is he's been picking up GSM SIM cards, kind of buys them 2-3 at a time. They're $9. You go to techsnap.ting.com, you're going to get a $25 credit. So you can get a $9 SIM and you'll get $25 worth of usage credit. So one of the things he's done is he's picked up a couple of different GSM hotspots off of eBay. And he's plugged them in there, and he says they work great. Feature phone's another great way, just giving new life to a smartphone that's been around for a little while, or getting yourself something really new, like the new Nexus 6, and putting it on Ting. And then you have the pure Google experience, updates directly from the Googs, and you have it on a network with no contract, and the phone is unlocked. Also, check out the Ting blog. They're always doing new and neat things over there, like they're giving away a Samsung Galaxy Grand Prime right now on their blog. It's And they do this from time to time, so it's worth checking out the Ting blog because they do these giveaways, some really nice phones. Start by going to techsnap.ting.com. Look around what Ting does, see why they're different than other mobile service providers. Go into the how much would you save, and then find out all the cool things like hotspot and tethering is included with the phone. Of course, voicemail, picture messaging, all that stuff that you would expect. No hidden line items. You only pay for what you use, $6 for the line. Isn't that slick? And you just plug in your current usage and find out how much you would save. Techsnap.ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. It's been my mobile service provider for a long time now, and I love it. TechSNAP.ting.com. Thank you, Ting. Okay, so we were just talking about Bruce Schneier, and he has an article up about something I have wondered a lot about, Google's crazy, unguessable URLs.
Yep. This is a post off Bruce Schneider's blog talking about how Google uses unguessable URLs to protect the photos that you post. So this is originally a story that came up from The Verge when somebody on Reddit had posted some photos privately into Google Photos and realized that if they go and right-click on the photo and copy like the original URL and pasted it to somebody, or in their case they viewed it in like incognito mode, and they even tried like doing it with wget off a virtual machine or a VPS in a different country, that they could still access the photo. And they're like, hey, aren't these photos supposed to be private? It's like, well, unless you give someone the URL, it turns out they are private because the URL, the file name in the URL is 40 random characters, which gives it a complexity of about 10 to the power of 70 different possible combinations, meaning it's probably stronger than your password.
So those URLs are, each picture has its own URL like that then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And each one's unique. And so specifically, it means if I share one picture with you, you can't use that. There's no information there that would allow you then access any one of my other pictures. You'd only get the one I shared with you. And Google says they don't actually create those URLs until you view it.
I was just wondering about that. Okay. So,
but basically it means somebody couldn't guess the URLs and start viewing your other pictures.
That might also be true for docs too then, right? Because the docs have crazy... Like our doc right now is...
there's more access control in a doc, right?
Yes.
Because you're actually running their application.
Right.
Whereas with the pictures, it's returning a raw JPEG file.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, it's interesting to see how it works, and I wonder if there's a reason why it's not just like a SHA-512 or something, but I guess they want it to be more random than that probably. But yeah, so if you look at some of your photos in Google Photos and you right-click on them and you can copy the source URL, and that's a public URL. Anyone can access it, if you share it with them. The photos are available to anyone who types in the right string of characters. The key is that string of characters is very long, and even if they tried to guess every possible combination to find your photo, there's so many possible combinations they would never be able to find very many photos. That's why it's... So there's a quote here from a Google engineer. It says, "So why is that public URL more secure than it looks? The short URL, or the short answer is that the URL is working as a password for each photo. Photo URLs are typically around 40 characters long. So if you wanted to scan all the possible combinations, you'd have to work through 10 to the power of 70 different combinations to get the right one, a problem that's basically astronomical scale. There's enough combinations that it's considered unguessable, and it's much harder to guess than your password. So if somebody really wants your photos, they'd be better off trying to guess your password than the URL for each individual photo."
No kidding.
Because if they got your password, they would get every photo, not just the one.
Yeah.
But two-factor auth, problem solved. But the same applies to Facebook photos, right? If I have access to, say, one of Chris's photos, but it's not public, and I want to share it with someone, I can do that, even if the other person doesn't have a Facebook account, by getting the JPEG URL rather than the regular Facebook photo URL. And then I can share that with them. Because traffic to and from Google Photos, Facebook, and things like that is encrypted with HTTPS, it means that even if I'm sitting there on the wire or on the Wi-Fi sniffing, I won't see the names of the photos, right? And then I can't access them. So the only real problem is that it's hard to revoke access to a photo with this system, right? If you want to, if I give this unguessable URL to you, you can then share it to anybody you want without me having any control. And because they're using a CDN and it's all cached and everything, even if I delete the photo off Google, the cached copy might still be there and that URL might still work if people already have the URL. But, don't share it if you don't want it shared, right? And Schneider notes, it's a perfectly valid security measure, although it's probably unsettling to some people especially if they don't understand how it works.
Yeah, I've looked at that and I've thought when I've seen those URLs, I've often thought this must be some sort of randomly generated private URL. And I did the same kind of experimentation. I did a private window and I tried to open it up over there. I did it on a different computer, and I guess it seems to be a pretty good system out. I can't really jump out as long as they're protecting
they use
against
something different. Like on Gmail, when I was trying to do the same trick of giving that private URL to someone, the Gmail one didn't work.
Oh, okay.
Gmail ones are crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, I can't really think of a major downside as long as they're protecting against ongoing scans, people that are trying to figure out a way to, I don't know. I mean, it seems like you could somehow just sort of let something run for a while and eventually it would collect pictures here and there.
Right. I've thought about this particular one before. Someone sent me a picture and I was like, that's a good picture. I wonder if I can find any other pictures near there.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was a SHA-256 hash of the file content, not the file name. And so it meant that, the search space was huge, right? 2 to the power of 256 possible combinations. So even randomly guessing, it wouldn't have been very likely to find any photos.
Yeah.
Even if there were a million photos out there, the chance of finding a second photo was pretty rare.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I'm really glad you cleared that up. Any other notes on that story?
No, just that one's been in my queue of when there's space in a TechSNAP. We should cover this story.
Yeah.
Since July.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, well, let me tell you about DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a sponsor of the TechSNAP program, and I think it's a great solution for a lot of you that need some infrastructure. If you've thought about deploying something on a VM on your LAN, or if you thought about trying something, I want you to consider DigitalOcean. Because here's the nice thing. For $5 a month, it'd be pretty easy and straightforward just to use it for testing. But when you're ready to push the button, it'll absolutely run in production, too. A lot of really great systems run on DigitalOcean. We have a ton of Jupiter Broadcasting systems now running on DigitalOcean as well. And I think you'll find with our promo code SNAPOcean and 2 months to play with it, you'll find something you can use a DigitalOcean droplet for. SyncThing, OwnCloud, BitTorrent Sync, Minecraft, Quazzle Core. These are all a couple of uses I use it for all the time. In fact, I made a plug for Quazzle Core recently. I think it was on last. And I heard back from somebody, I think it was Sean PC in the chat room, who said he loves it. There's a lot of little things that you can use DigitalOcean for to make your life easier and better. And there's also a lot of ways you can use it to just put something in production. They have different distributions you can choose from. They have one-click deployment of great applications, like tons of great blogging software, the entire Nginx stack if you want it, or the Apache stack. I mean, the list goes on and on. They have a lot of really good technology. And they have data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, and Germany. So pick one close to you. So when I set up a new SyncThing DigitalOcean droplet, I picked one in San Francisco. Most of my traffic goes down to California anyways, for pretty much everywhere I go. And so I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. Put it right there in San Francisco since I'm going down there already. And one of the things that I always appreciate about DigitalOcean is their interface. You can get started in less than 55 seconds, and their interface plays a huge part in that. You can get for $5 a month, 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And if you use the promo code SNAPOcean, that $10 credit means you could try it out 2 months for free. Go try out a free BSD rig, or go try out a new Ubuntu rig, or a Fedora rig, or a Core OS machine. Wouldn't that be interesting? DigitalOcean. Use the promo code SNAPOcean. A lot of really cool things you can do with that. I'm going to be traveling soon. And we use DigitalOcean to bounce things off of all of the time while I'm traveling. It is such a great tool. And that pricing structure, if you check it out, if you go to DigitalOcean's website and scroll down, they talk about their straightforward pricing structure. And one of the things I really love about it is hourly. So they have a really nice API that you can tie in with your existing management infrastructure, and you can scale up on demand to DigitalOcean whenever you need to. Or if you just want to do some testing, this hourly pricing is nuts. And $10 a month is their most popular plan. You get a gigabyte of RAM, a CPU, 30 gigabytes of SSD, because they're all SSDs, and 2 terabytes of transfer. That is great. And then you combine that with some of the really, really good tutorials. Like they have one that I'm going to recommend you go check out. How to set up multi-factor authentication for SSH on Ubuntu 14.04. Just make your droplets even more secure. They have really good tutorials. They have professional editors to edit all of this stuff, and they pay their community who contributes. DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code SNAPOcean. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Such a great service. So perfect for our audience. Try it out.
DigitalOcean was originally really developer focused. It was set up a quick development environment and work on stuff. But now with the floating IP feature, you can actually build high availability production stuff on it. I think that was the last missing piece.
Yep. Yeah, they're huge in the development community, but they're just growing all the time. It's really exciting to watch. So, Alan, we pre-recorded, so normally I would plug the BSD Now program right here. Episode 114, though, is edited and ready to go, or it's close to editing and ready to go. So find episode 114 of the BSD Now program, and I am probably going to be traveling while you're watching this or next week's episode, so find out my adventures at jupiterbroadcasting.com/rover. You can follow the rover log for when I'm traveling, or sometimes even when I'm not traveling, and stay up to date on that. But with the news all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com or pop in that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website or start a thread on our subreddit at techsnap.reddit.com. And John from Canada writes in with our first email. He says, the complicated FreeNAS box are combined with Linux. Hi, Alan and Chris. I'm a computer engineering student with a large interest in Linux, open source, and related technologies. I've been listening to Jupiter Broadcasting's podcast for about a year now, and I enjoy all of your shows. After listening to Alan talk about ZFS on the show, when I decided to build a home server, I knew that the only choice for file system was going to be ZFS, so I decided to go with FreeNAS. I know FreeNAS is really meant to be a file server, but I also wanted to use it for other things. I'm building it for personal use, and I plan to use it mainly for backups and media. I also want to host an OwnCloud server, use Plex, and possibly run a mail server as well. I really like the idea of using a FreeNAS server. However, I'm not sure how it will work with trying to run OwnCloud, Plex, and other things other than plugins or jails, and was wondering if you had any experience with this. Will FreeNAS work well enough for this? Or is it a bad idea trying to complicate my file server, and should I just leave files on it? I've considered the alternative of setting up Arch server somewhere else in my house and just setting up OwnCloud on that and just having to hook up to FreeNAS. I know Chris just recently did this, so I was curious to hear his opinions on the matter. In case you're interested in my build, here's my current setup. And he lists he has a Western Digital 6 terabyte hard drives and RAID Z2. He also has 8 gigabytes of ECC RAM, 16 gigabyte SATA boot device.
Learn to read, Chris. That very clearly says 32 gigabytes of ECC RAM.
What did I say? Oh, 8 gigabytes?
It's 8 gigabytes. Yeah.
And
nice Super Micro motherboard is the important part.
Super Micro motherboard, and also it's all hooked up to a UPS.
Yes. So FreeNAS has a plugin system. Plex and OwnCloud are like the two most popular, so they will work very, very well. Mm-hmm. I happen to know that Chris Moore uses his FreeNAS with an OwnCloud jail, and that's how he syncs his calendar to his phone as well.
Nice.
A bunch of other stuff. So yes, FreeNAS will work very well for that. Things that aren't plugins are a little harder to do, but they're usually fairly doable. But Plex is like the most popular app on FreeNAS, so I definitely know that that'll work very nicely. Also, if you watch our interview last week on BSD Now, you will hear that in FreeNAS 10, which should enter beta a week from now, or less than a week from now, they are going to have support for Beehive for running VMs on your FreeNAS. So you could put Arch in a Beehive and run that on top of your FreeNAS 10 if you're willing to run the beta.
That's not bad, yeah.
Yeah. So now that FreeNAS is getting up to a version of FreeBSD that has Beehive, interesting things are coming. And hopefully by the time we get around to FreeNAS 10.1 or whatever, it'll even have support for running Windows VMs now that that's landed in Beehive.
So his question about, I've been using a front-end server that sits in front of FreeNAS, and that works really well too. It just depends on, for me, I wanted to have a lot of applications that I updated all the time. So it just kind of depends on the server.
It depends.
It's more work.
Ideally, you don't want to put too much stuff on the file server and just let it be the file server. But at the same time, you can only have so many machines in your house. And if it's for your house, then, the reasons to keep them separate are fewer. And, with you got a fairly beefy CPU there and lots of RAM, so you're fine to run your Plex and your OwnCloud and a couple other things off your FreeNAS.
Yeah, I think so.
It'll be fine.
Linux
Don't
Nick
use Linux.
writes in. He says, "Hey, Chris and Alan, I'd love to hear your thoughts and recommendations on see maybe if the community has a solution. I'm an IT person for a student healthcare center at one of the largest universities in the Northeast. We have hundreds of Lenovo Windows 7 enterprise desktops and laptops. As part of our efforts to be HIPAA compliant next year, we are encrypting all our machines. All of our new hardware comes with TPM chips that allow us to encrypt the machines without requiring a password or startup key, like a USB device to unlock it or to boot. Unfortunately, some of our older hardware does not have this and requires startup keys if we use BitLocker. Our healthcare professionals and other related staff are not computer savvy, and none of them, not one of them are. So this solution needs to be as painless as possible. Our leading idea for machines without TPM would be to plug in a small flash drive into the back of each desktop and then provide these to staff with laptops that need to travel. Some with some sort of read-only file system and a startup key on them. Do you have any better ideas? If this seems like the most sensible option, is there anything I could do better? Thanks for the awesome show. Been listening since the beginning. Linux Nick."
Depends on the type of key, but oftentimes these like USB key wouldn't actually even have a file system on it. It would be a special thing. But yeah, a read-only file system, ideally that way, the key doesn't even show up once the OS is running. It's hard to say. But yes, you can get USB sticks that like stick out only like that far. They're very slim because you don't want to, if you end up with a USB stick like this hanging out of the laptop, then it's just a lever in order to break the USB ports in the laptop or whatever, right? A tiny USB stick. You can even get ones that are like just the chip and they're only like paper thin, and you can like jam them in the port and it'd be impossible to even pull it out. It would just clog the port basically. And that way they could never lose them. Although it kind of makes you wonder about what's the purpose of encrypting the hard drive if the key is on this USB stick that is always in the laptop. So the laptop gets stolen, the key gets stolen, and they have access to everything anyway.
What do you suppose the main advantage to encrypting the entire hard drive is too, instead of just like a data partition? Just cache files, temp files, stuff like that?
There's so many files that you never know what, or the user saves some sensitive information to their desktop, and who knows where they might save it. The real question with the TPM is like, does the TPM do any good if you don't require something stronger than a BIOS password to actually boot the machine to unlock the TPM?
Right, yeah.
Because then again, if the whole point of this HIPAA compliance is to protect the information on the laptop, if the laptop gets stolen, what's actually preventing people, as a person who stole that laptop, from accessing the sensitive information on it?
Chatroom is also saying that perhaps this is something YubiKey could help with, to
Possibly,
maybe input a passphrase.
The YubiKey is a little more oriented at power users and the person who's actually using the laptop, whereas they kind of want this to be out of the way.
Yeah, this is something that we also used to struggle with quite a lot. Of course, if you're using BitLocker, just make sure you have backup ways to get to their data when the user gets fired or their account gets deleted or disabled or whatever. Make sure the administrators...
The one advantage to something like the older Windows encryption, like the individual directory encryption or whatever, was that all the data was encrypted to the user that owned it and to like one or two administrator accounts, so that if the user forgot their password and it was reset, which made them unable to access the encrypted data, or if the user was fired or whatever, that somebody would still have a key that could access those files.
Right.
That's why it's important to have more than one key.
TechSNAP.reddit.com if you have any recommendations. All right, Alan, you ready for Spazzy C's email?
Sure.
He was eagle-eyed. He said, I saw the double TechSNAP on the calendar, so I thought I should throw my question in. Ha-ha, smart.
Thank you.
He says, I have FreeNAS Minis that serves as my primary backup and Plex server, and I replicate the family photos and home movies data share to another FreeNAS box in my basement. I would like to physically move that FreeNAS box in my basement to my mother-in-law's house to get it off premises. My question is, once it's set to the other location, how do I connect the two FreeNAS boxes together? My firewall is a pfSense box, and theirs is from their ISP. And I'm sure I will have I'm unsure if I will have the ability to access it. Thanks for all the great technical knowledge you impart every week. Spazzy C.
So for this one, on the pfSense, you can set up a VPN server, and then you could connect from the pfSense at your mother-in-law's house to your from the FreeNAS at your mother-in-law's house to the pfSense at your house, and create and basically let it join your LAN, and then it would just have a regular IP on your LAN, and it'll all be fine except for it'll be slower than your LAN. I don't know how to set up an OpenVPN on the FreeNAS box. I don't know that much about FreeNAS because I just use regular FreeBSD to do it myself. Like with the plugin jails, I don't know if you'd actually be able to create the connection. Ideally, you would be able to have a pfSense at each side and have the two pfSenses connect to each other and bridge the network, and it would be the whole LAN would be as if it was one really big LAN. But since you don't, I'm not entirely sure.
So he needs to basically have a box on each side of the VPN that could route the traffic for him, and then have him on a network
the pfSense will do that at his house.
Yes.
It's just a matter
But he needs to have something on her end, too, on the mother-in-law's end.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be the router.
Well, no, it doesn't have to be the router, and it might be possible to do it with FreeNAS. You might just search around and see if it's fairly easy to set up OpenVPN on a
Actually,
FreeNAS.
he said the box he's putting over at her house is a FreeBSD machine, not a FreeNAS machine.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. So it's FreeNAS at his house, but it's FreeBSD on the machine downstairs that he's moving over to
then
another.
it's very easy to just install OpenVPN from ports and have it connect out to your pfSense.
Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah, slam dunk. Good luck, Spazzy C. Jeremy O'Connell writes in. He says, hello, Chris and Alan. I'm back with another PHP FPM question. Brace yourself, Alan. It's my understanding that Nginx with PHP FPM handles load better than Apache with mod PHP. However, I am seeing some cray CPU usage from PHP FPM. At times, the process PHP FM starts using 100% of the CPU. I've turned on catch workers output, so it outputs the error log of Nginx. I am not seeing any specific errors like a bad library. I have checked open connections, and sometimes this happens. But there doesn't appear to be many. I've run PS AUX, and he's grepped for PHP FPM many times, and he sees, and he includes the output right here where we've got a few processes running. He says, anyway, I've read some forum threads, but I want to see if you had any ideas tracking down issues where PHP FPM spikes to 100% CPU. Thanks for your thoughts.
Almost all those instances, it'll be the PHP script that's running that's doing it. So in the phpfpm.conf, you can enable some extra logging, but there's a setting in there, I forget what it's called, but basically lets you limit how long a script can run for, and if it runs longer than that, kill it. There's also, I think, a built-in logging for anything that takes a long time.
There you go.
It's like the slow log.
So that might track it down to which script is causing the problem?
And it would tell you which script with which input is actually causing it to be slow.
PHP FPM continues to be difficult for Jeremy, but that might be one.
In the end, you're running the same PHP script in the same PHP process as if it was built into Apache or if it runs as a standalone. So I'm guessing you were having this problem in Apache. It wasn't as easy to see what was happening because it was all bundled inside the Apache process.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
Or Apache was otherwise slowing it down before you got to the point of actually being able to use all of the CPU for the script.
Yeah. So, all right, Alan, guess what? We got a book review coming into the feedback section here, and it's a book you may have heard of before, FreeBSD Master, or it's FreeBSD Mastery, ZFS, by Mr. Alan Jude and Michael L. or W. Lucas, right? Is it W. Lucas or L. Lucas?
Yes,
W.
Michael W. Lucas.
W. Yeah, so
not to be confused as Michael Lucas without the W, who's a gay porn star.
Right. Okay. Good to keep that straight.
So when you go to the URL, you have to be very.
Looks like a pretty positive review you got here, Alan. Yep. That's cool. ZFSbook.com. Is that where I go to grab it?
Yep.
Very nice. Very cool. That must feel cool. The other thing I saw that's pretty neat is I saw at the Seagull table that there was some FreeBSD Mastery ZFS books on there.
And SSH Mastery and a bunch of the other ones.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Now it's amongst the Mastery books, Alan. ZFSbook.com.
It was the FreeBSD table, and so Michael Lucas brought out his collection of
nice
BSD books to show off.
If you want to send an email into the TechSNAP program, go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose TechSNAP from the dropdown, or email us directly, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. We'd love to answer your question next week. And with the feedback all done and the emails and the questions all done, it means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show, but we still want to give you some links to follow up on your own after the show. And some of these links came from our operatives over on our subreddit at techsnap.reddit.com. And our first story, well, this smells like an Alan Jude find. Fewer IPsec VPN connections at risk from weak Diffie-Hellman. Alan,
Yes.
according to
So
Thresh
when we talked about the weak Diffie-Hellman and it said up to 66% of IPsec VPNs were at risk, it turns out maybe their method of checking was wrong. In particular, when they did the connection and they tried to negotiate, when they got a certain error back, they didn't count those servers as being open to the public VPN servers, and but they were ones that didn't accept the bad key. They just refused the bad key in a slightly different way than some other ones. So the 66% number might have actually been is higher than actuality.
Okay.
But there are still a lot of VPNs out there that have the problem.
I like that nice follow-up, though. Good to just sort of touch on that.
This is this is the whole point of peer-reviewed papers, is that when you write a paper and you claim that 66% of all VPNs are vulnerable, somebody else is like, well,
somebody's going to peer review that.
This is why you have to include the method you used to do the sample. And it's like, here's the problem with your method, and I fixed it for you, and here's the actual method.
Right. Boy, underscore
and
that.
And then somebody else will be like, whoa, but you forgot to consider this other thing, right?
Right. It's an evolving thing, but it keeps getting better and better.
It's called science.
Science. All right, this is some science for you. British gas leak sees 2,400 customer passwords posted online. Not getting a lot of media attention either, but British Gas has written to affected customers to tell them that while it may not have been a quote-unquote hack, they say, the effect is the same. It somehow managed to leak. Not get hacked, but leak information that found its way onto the internet. Reports have it that 2,399 email addresses and passwords have been leaked online. A package of emails and passwords is a pretty good haul for an online exploiter, particularly the same details if they use those same usernames and passwords for other sites. And then people are noticing online, too, that there's not really a lot of attention getting about this. But
this one appears to be something like they were in a spreadsheet that they accidentally posted on their website.
They did it themselves. They did it themselves.
Or something basically they accidentally exposed them rather than it was hacked.
So I didn't know this was still going on, but the GPL enforcement suit against VMware continues, but in Germany.
Well, because it hasn't actually started yet.
They're
still going through the preliminary motions of VMware saying, because of this, this, and this, you should just throw this case out. And then the Linux developer, Christoph Hellwig, saying, well, actually, this, and this.
Okay, that explains
VMware's first one was that this guy doesn't own the copyright on the whole Linux kernel, so he doesn't have the right to sue us for it. And secondly, what's the VMware's things called is VM kernel, was it?
Yeah, VMKHL.
VMK Linux.
Yeah.
VMK Linux is an interoperability module that communicates via a stable interface called the VMK API, and so therefore isn't a derivative product. And Christoph is saying, well, my copyright's all over the place, so I have enough of an interest to bring the suit, and that's not a stable API. You're integrating with the kernel, and therefore it's a derivative work.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and you have to rebuild that module every time you update your kernel.
Yeah, so it's obviously not a stable API.
Yeah.
Basically, VMware is made the filing private so that the Software Conservancy can't actually publish the details, but they got permission to get a high-level overview and have be able to tell us a little bit about what's going on, just not the details.
It came from the Software Conservancy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Brings up some of the points we saw with we had a discussion on BSD Now that'll come out the week this does about HP at I forget which Linux conference, trying to get more people to use the GPL instead of permissive licenses like the Apache 2 and BSD license. And it's like, well, if you want to know why the companies behind like OpenSwitch demanded a permissive license, is because they didn't want to get sued like VMware.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. And
to get a whole group of different companies and get all their legal departments to agree on one license kind of requires having a permissive license. But anyway, moving on.
I didn't really know what you thought of this next story. Top German official is infected with a highly advanced spy Trojan with ties to the NSA, containing almost superhuman engineering. The subtitle reads at ours. The Rain malware was found on the official's laptop. Rain malware.
I don't know about superhuman.
Yeah.
engineering.
Yeah, now we talked about it a while ago. Rain is among the most advanced pieces of malware ever discovered, with dozens of modules that can be used to customize attacks on targets in telecommunications, hospitality, energy, airline, and research industries, whatever that is. Ours is really laying it on thick. They say its technical DNA bears some resemblance to previously discovered state-sponsored malware, including espionage trojans such as Flame and Dooku.
But if we know all those aspects about Flame and Dooku, what would stop someone from writing the same thing into their Trojan? So it doesn't necessarily mean it's that connected.
Right.
But it does look like it hides in NTFS extended attributes and does a rootkit with vmem.sys and disp.dll and hides in there really well. So
Yeah. Boy, this is actually a lot of callbacks to previous stories we've done, including the Equation group.
Yep.
So it's an interesting read. So essentially, a lot of the malware we've talked about before was used against a top German official. I guess that's the quick takeaway of that.
Some of the big heavy stuff.
And it's interesting. It's just different. It's a lot of different stuff we've talked about all being used in one single case.
And I'm sure they're not happy about that because that malware is only useful when people don't know it's out there.
Yeah. MySQL servers hacked with malware to perform DDoS attacks. This is from Symantec.
So there's a flaw in older MySQL servers, and if you don't patch, then your machine will be turned into a bot and will be used in denial of service attacks to take out other people.
It's kind of obvious at this point.
Which will hurt your connection and theirs, so please fix that.
Yeah, go patch, please. In other words. All right, Rockwell patches serious frosty URL pick vulnerability. Alan, these headlines are ridiculous. Can you explain to me what this is? I'm sorry. Rockwell patches serious frosty URL PLC. Oh, okay, vulnerability.
Yeah.
All right.
So in these programmable logic controllers that are industrial control systems, they interact with a URL, and if you give it a specific frosty URL, it will compromise the machine.
Okay. Very nice. That's a nice
URL
feature.
parsing. Yeah. They fixed that.
Yeah,
so
that's a good
people
patch.
install patches. But it's industrial control system, so maybe they'll install the patch in 10 years.
All right, this is an interesting article that looks at the impact of Netflix's open source software contribution and development. And I bet you have some interesting stories, probably speaking with some people from there about this.
They're mostly just trying to maintain the smallest delta they can to open source projects so that they don't, where most companies, when they're building something on top of something like FreeBSD, they'll have a bunch of secret sauce that's specific to their business that either because it's so specific to them, the FreeBSD doesn't want it, or because it's their secret sauce, they don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
But because of the way Netflix's business works, all the stuff they do on FreeBSD, they'd rather get it to give it away. So, sometimes that requires them doing a little bit of extra work to make it a little more general and not specific to Netflix so that FreeBSD will even accept it in the first place. But they also do a lot of other cool stuff. Like we've seen them do a lot of their tools for detecting attacks and even just frameworks for building UIs and all kinds of basically everything that's not really to do with movies. Netflix just gives away because why not?
Yeah, I really like there's certain companies out there like Netflix where they're not losing any competitiveness by contributing like this, and so they just go all out and put some really good stuff out there.
Well, and because they're not just dumping it out there like some companies do either. They're maintaining it, and so then when people have fixes, they come back and everybody benefits.
That's pretty cool.
It's important that it's both ways, right? It's lots of companies do things where they'll open source something by just like dumping the version that is out there over the wall, and then maybe a year later they dump a newer version. But it's different when they actually, accept contributions back from other people and stuff.
So I was complaining about headlines. This next one from Dark Matters. C-suite pride slam dunks hard before the checkbook. That's come on, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this one basically that the pride of the CEO can sometimes get in the way of cybersecurity, and a great example they're talking about the TalkTalk one where the first headline we see is from the TalkTalk CEO saying our cybersecurity is heads and shoulders above all of our competitors. We're awesome, blah, blah. And then the next day it's we had no legal obligation to encrypt that data, so we didn't. We're not going to do security unless we're regulated to do so.
We've done the minimum viable security.
Yeah. So it's like, well, are you head and shoulders above everybody and that's what your claim to fame is? Or are you half-assing it because you're not required to do anything else?
Right.
You kind of got to make up your mind. You can't be doing both at the same time.
Oh, yeah, and then damage control. Get your Experian coverage, and you're good to go.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
So this one's got a video. You should play. The
Oh,
first
it does? Oh,
little
okay.
bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will. I will.
So this one's
I had
a
it
new
muted.
technology that allows attackers to steal your face.
Your face. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so here is this one. The YouTube, there's two videos.
The lower one.
Okay. So we got, it is two people, and then between them are two computer monitors. I'm going to hit play. This is real-time expression transfer for facial reenactment.
Full screen.
Full screen. Full
We
screen.
present a real-time method for photorealistic transfer of facial expressions from a source actor, here on the right, to a target actor on the left.
Notice how the guy in the white shirt's mouth isn't moving in reality, but
His image...
The prototype system shown here only needs one consumer-grade PC
Eyebrows
and a
and
consumer
mouth
depth
and-
camera for each actor.
And it's animating the mouth
yes.
based on
So
the
with
real
this-
input from a real human over a webcam.
With this, I could do an episode of TechSNAP where
The
when I
real-time
talk,
capability
your
of
mouth
our
moves.
approach paves the way for a
Now I
variety of
want
new
Skype.
applications.
Now I see where you're going. Okay, all right, that's fine.
I could do a Skype call where I was you.
You would basically just have to, people would have to get past the fact that we have the same voice. Then other than
Yes.
that, yeah.
But imagine, all the phones that have unlock with your face.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also just, if somebody only knows me from my face, someone could easily pretend to be me on a Skype call or podcast or whatever.
Yeah, this is going to be the this is going to be the automation of the
Currently
podcast
the
host.
giveaway, if you keep watching the video, currently the giveaway is the teeth. They use fake teeth.
I did actually kind of look at that.
Yeah, it's like about halfway through.
Yeah.
A little bit further in.
You could actually see it a little bit in one.
They
of-
actually have a demonstration of the fake teeth further in somewhere.
Okay. Here, let me see. They had also when she smiled or when he smiled.
Yeah.
You could see the teeth and it looked.
And the teeth are too perfect because they're just a computer model.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. I don't.
There-ish. Right there. A little bit further. There's the fake teeth at the bottom. Like they're like prototypical fake teeth.
Yeah. 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 That would be the big downside, but they could work on that.
Exactly.
Huh.
And with enough profile of the original person, you could have the real teeth.
This is an interesting. This is a really interesting post.
Now, they're doing this live, but then imagine doing this with just, like at the top, just if you compiled all the Facebook photos of a person that you were targeting, then you could fairly easily probably assume their face.
Yeah, or imagine what you could do for public officials with like a news statement. Who needs Obama to actually say anything anymore? Just get a voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from Kaspersky Labs, and you can find a link, like all this stuff, in the show notes.
Well,
Check it out.
Kaspersky just highlighting there is the university research, but
Yeah, I know, but I mean
that's
the
a cool
posts on
project to work on in university, actually.
there. Yeah, it is. All right, Alan. The next roundup item is it's a tweet. U.S. officials are concerned about Russia and how close they are to underwater cables.
Yeah, so there's like this Russian ship just kind of floating around right where some of the undersea cables are. And they're like, are they cutting our undersea cables to attack us or are they wiretapping them?
That'd be a thing, wouldn't it?
And then it's like, how about let's not worry about it and just encrypt the shit?
Oh, they think, yeah, okay, yeah.
If everything going over the cable was encrypted so that the U.S. couldn't read it, then
Oh.
also Russia couldn't read it.
Oh, that's interesting.
But because you're passing these laws saying, hey, people shouldn't encrypt stuff so that we can read it, then you have this problem.
I got, it's funny because Fox was reporting not that they were going to tap the wires, but that they were going to just cut them to cause economic chaos.
Yes, that's one of the two concerns.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
But if they're going to do that, they probably could do it much quicker.
I don't really think they'd want to do
Just
that.
like drive by, drag the anchor. Be
That
done.
I don't think they'd really want to do that. It doesn't seem. I don't think that's actually gonna. My bet, not
It'd
gonna.
be
happen.
pretty obvious what happened.
Yeah, it would be pretty obvious. All
Well,
right.
I guess you could set it like a mine to go off like a year later or something, or a month later.
I know it was close to all of our hearts. We got to talk about TrueCrypt, and there's a critical vulnerability. Dun dun dun.
Although it's not in the encryption, right? The encryption's been audited; it's fine. But the actual software itself has a privilege escalation bug, which could allow an attacker to be like the system privileges on your Windows machine. And once they had that, then they could just capture your passphrase and be able to decrypt, or just wait until you've mounted it and then steal your files.
This is another find by Google's Project Zero team. So that's cool. That's really cool.
And Veracrypt, one of the continuations of the open source TrueCrypt, has apparently has version 1.15 out, which apparently fixes this.
Yes, CVE 2015 7359 and CVE 2015 7358. There you go. And good, another tip of the hat to Google's Project Zero team, who's really knocking them out. Okay, Alan, so this next one comes from Netcraft. U.S. military cybersecurity fails to make the grade.
Yes. So back in 2014, the Certificate Authority / Browser Forum said that, hey, we'll not issue any more SHA-1 certificates. Everything will be SHA-256 or better. It turns out the U.S. DoD and military, which have their own certificate authority, are still issuing crappy certificates.
Surprise. Oh. So really, it's another example of you say one thing.
Basically, now that Chrome doesn't like SHA-1 certificates and started issuing the warnings about them, they'll probably get more and more complaints, and hopefully we'll fix it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they'll fix it. Yeah, I won't. You know what? I won't even give them a hard time. I'm sure
more and more closer to being spoofable, and that's bad.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it is. And I think it's probably a good thing that browsers are being more aggressive about calling this stuff out. And also, I think people are getting. I think average consumers are getting a little more aware of what's HTTPS versus not. I don't know if they understand, but I think they understand secure and not secure.
So that's people seeing the lock, thinking the website meant it was legitimate, was a big problem.
Right.
Where anybody can buy an SSL certificate for $9 and run a site that takes your money, doesn't send you anything. It's kind of an issue, right?
Yeah. So all those links, jupiterbroadcasting.com. Find TechSNAP 239. Scroll down after the download links. You'll see links to everything Alan talked about. We'd love to get your emails. Please go to the contact page on our site or email us directly, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or the subreddit. Subreddit's also a great place to submit your own stories for the roundup, and sometimes we even bump them up to the main section if they're really meaty and need some analysis. So join us live. jblive.tv is where you watch it. jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar is where you get it converted to your local time zone. We do the show on Thursdays, so you can find it there. Alan, is there anything else we want to cover this week?
No, I think that's about it.
All right, everybody. Well, I think that will wrap us up. Thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you right back here next week.